Hello. In this video, I want to provide you guys a little bit of an example and some guidance on how you can build for yourself some tools that will sort of help you in terms of keeping track of what the customer requirements are and all that sort of stuff, rather than having to figure it out, look it up, whatever else, so that you can kind of be looking ahead, if you will. And so I like to, the reason I'm showing you this rather than just giving you a tool at this stage is that I think it's important not just for CapSim, but also for the CompXM and for beyond, that you guys start thinking in terms of how you would put this kind of information together for yourself. On the CompXM, I won't be there to write a tool that will help you guys figure out sort of your decisions over the 4 rounds. So this is sort of if I give you a fish, I've fed you for a day. If I teach you to fish, I've fed you for your whole life. And so this is a skill. So the first place to start with, in my opinion, is the buyer criteria. And the very first thing that we've done, or that I've done, is just go grab for you. I think it's always useful for you to have this as a quick reference. What are for each customer segment? What are the weightings of each criteria? And so how important is it? And then I like to shade them, the darker shading being the number 1 criteria, the lighter shading being the number 2 highest percentage criteria. And so it sort of draws you immediately to, if I look across traditional, it's age, then price. Low, it's price, then age. High, it's position, then age. Performance, MTBF. You see what I mean. So the color coding helps you. Again, all of this information is contained. I mean, quite frankly, it's everywhere, but the easy place is if you went to your industry reports. And so in this case, you're just looking up reports. Actually, I'm going to log into a team here so that I can show you this from the perspective of a teammate. So we're going to go to reports, industry reports. It's the industry conditions report. And so if you went down to that, you could go kind of down to the bottom in each segment, starting with traditional, and you'll see it lists them and gives their percentage out next to them. And that percentage obviously never changes from round to round, so you just do this once and you always have it as a reference. Second thing, probably the one that a lot of people have found the most useful in the past, is this buyer criteria calculator. And I've sort of set it up at this point with all of this stuff that is hard-coded, that doesn't change, so that you know that. And you'll see that what I do is I'm calculating the ideal spot in terms of performance. It'd be nice if I could spell performance, I guess. And then size. And I have it as of January 1 and then as December 31st. The reason I do that is you have to be thinking in terms of that by the end of December, you want to be ahead of the December 31 spot. But on January 1st, you want to make sure that you're ahead of the January 1 spot. So again, that would be your ideal if you were keeping up with those. And so it sort of tells you that. Other neat thing about that, and you can add your own column if you want, is a lot of times the coaching will say that ideally, if you could do it, if you could fit it into a 1-year R&D cycle, that what you would do is you would, by December 31st, put your ideal spot basically a half a year ahead of the December 31st ideal spot for the next round. Now, that sounds great, and you could figure that out as basically just being the difference between these two divided by 2 added to the December 31st. I will tell you, I don't necessarily adhere quite to that rigid of a strategy, but you could add something like that. So what I've done, in order to figure out the right ideal spot for each round, you need to know what the starting spot is in round 0. Then you need to know how that center drifts, not the starting, this is the starting center, sorry, not the center, the ideal spot. You need to know how that center drifts from round to round. And then you need to know how far from the center and in which direction your ideal position offset is. Luckily for us, all of that information is contained in the industry conditions report, again, that I showed you where you can get. You get the starting points from the table here. You get the drift rates here. You'll get the ideal spot offsets here. And if you were to include all of those, it would create this table, which you can just go back and look at every time. But what I do is a little bit of an Excel thing. And so what I would do is basically say, oh, so in any round, and here's where you're going to put your round. So in any round, the position at the beginning of the round is basically equal to whatever the end of round position is minus one round. And so the way that we would think about it is it's equal to whatever the round zero starting spot was plus whatever the drift is times whatever the current round is minus one. So that gets us what the center for the new round is. And then we're going to add to that whatever the ideal position offset is. Okay, and so that would say that in round one, we would expect at the beginning of round one, which is the end of round zero, that the ideal spot's at 5. Now, I'm going to do this one thing in Excel. I'm going to lock in basically this round one amount, create an absolute reference to it by putting dollar signs in front of the column and row reference. And that way I can kind of drag this thing around. So at the beginning, row 1, 5 at the end of 15. I can run all this stuff down and say, oh, sure enough, at the beginning, which would be the startings, all of that stuff sort of matches. I guess I don't need this last thing. So that all sort of matches. And you might look at that and say, well, gosh, genius, that's not particularly useful. We can read that off of the report. That's true. But what's probably more useful is this. So I'm just going to borrow this formula, Control C, paste it over here. So we're basically starting the same way. I'm now going to remove the minus 1. Okay? And so now what it's telling you is what this has to be. I'm sorry, I did this backwards. I apologize. Completely messed that up, didn't I? So instead of dragging it that way, we're gonna do it slightly differently. Because I changed the order of these columns. I'm sorry. So when we drag this over, what we really needed to be doing is basically locking in the column here. And the reason that we got to lock in that column is we're doing performance, and all the performance information's in this column. So I'm going to put a dollar sign there. And again, that's all good. Does what it's supposed to. But what about at the end? Now we take the 1 away. And so it's now automatically calculating that. Sorry about that mistake. And the cool thing is now I can say, well, what about round 2? And you'll see it updates. What about round 4, which is what you guys may be heading into? It updates. And so you never have to go through again and sort of calculate for each round, hey, where's that ideal spot going to be? Because you just got this thing set up. Now, to do the same thing for size, I'm not going to borrow the formulas. We're just going to start out equals, again, what the size criteria is at the beginning, plus the drift times whatever round we're in, and we'll put that dollar sign in this to lock it in as a reference again, minus 1, plus whatever the offset is this time. So again, we get 12.9. If we put this back to round 1, we'll see that it's 15. That kind of matches, so we drag it down. And if we do the same thing as we did before and just paste it over, remove the 1, So it's no longer a -1. And we drag that down. So now we have the performance beginning and end, size beginning and end. And same thing, if you change things, you can see that that starts to move. And if you're wondering, hey, is that right? Let's just go look at for round 4 at the end for traditional. I have 7.8 and 12.2. If I go look at this and I did it right, for traditional, 7.8, 12.2. So you can check it against the other. This is just sort of a neat way of doing that. Again, for the MTBFs and the age, those requirements never change, so I hard-coded them. Price, we're going to use the same approach. I've already captured the starting, so round 0 ranges. Difference here is we know that the price ranges drop by 50 cents each round. And so I can just say it's equal to whatever the starting range is minus 0.5 times whatever round we're in. Again, we're going to put the little dollar signs on that. Okay. And so since we're in round 4, the low end becomes $18 and the high end becomes $28 on this. And if we wanted to go look at a round 4 report, we could see that. We don't have one generated right now, but you can confirm that. And so again, just a nice little something that you can do to sort of build out, if you will. And I'm going to go ahead and I won't do that right now, but to build out a tool that's useful for yourself. Also have this little thing. It's pretty simple. I put together, and I'm just going to give that to you guys. And this is the age calc. So you put in what the age is at the start of a round for your product. Say it's 2.4. How many months to revision? So you would sort of say, oh, is it going to end in this year? If it is, then it's, call it 6 months out. So at the end of the year, what is the age going to be? And it's a kind of a complex formula that I put in there, but it is correct. It would say at the end it's age 2. The logic of that very simply is 2.4 at the start. It goes for 6 months, and so at the end of 6 months, it's a 3. Gets cut in half, and so at the end of the getting cut in half, it's a 1.5, and then you're going to add another 6 months to it, so that's another half of a year, so now you're at 2. So that's kind of the logic, but again, the nice thing about this is you can just plug it in. You plug in the numbers, and it solves out for you. So I'm going to highlight this. This is the result. And these two, I like kind of coloring things in. So these two are where you put in numbers, and this gives you your result. That way you kind of see when you do stuff kind of where you're expecting the age to come out. Next little calculator that I built, and I did in fact go ahead and build it out for you. Very similar to the other ones, but starts out by saying what's the market size in round 0, what's the annual growth rate, and then very simply says, oh, so if I know the round, then I know that the market size must be equal to the original market size times 1 plus the growth rate raised to the power of however many rounds it is. And so, you can change this and say, oh, I'm going into round 3. These are the market sizes. And that way, since CapSim and the Courier doesn't give you the market size for the upcoming round, only for the last one, you can always know that. Okay, and I'm giving you that one already built. The very last thing I do is a lot of folks are having a bit of a struggle with how to figure out their market share. And of course, one method which is talked about is basically going out and getting that market share from the potential market share report. You can do that. But the theoretically correct and preferred method, at least as a starting point, is to go get the information from your customer survey. So let's kind of back up here. We will go to the industry reports again, CapSim Courier, and we'll just go ahead and view these for one round here. And so we're in round 3. Let's see, I'm just going to go look at some. We'll just pick some out here. All right, so I'm trying to find one, sorry, that's not got a lot in it. So we're going to use this high-end one. And so the idea here, very simply, and give me just a second because I got to kind of reposition things to be able to read this well, is you're just going to enter in the customer survey score. So 45, 41, 33, 3, 1, and you can just blank those others out. And it calculates for you what the total is. Then you're going to say, well, what's my product? And maybe I'm, the third one down here, so I'm a 33. So I'm going to enter that in. It's going to say, based on that, your market share in December is 26.8%. Okay, so you got that. Well, you can go back and look over here and see that that's not what this came up with. It came up with 23% for that product. The reason you're at 26.8 is your product wasn't always as good as it was throughout the year. You've made some changes to it. And as you made changes to it, your market share improved. And so this is your best estimate. This is actually the correct estimate of on January 1st what your market share will be. Now, the gotcha is for month to month, you're going to have changes take effect. Other people are going to have changes take effect. And so this may not be your actual market share month to month for the next year. You're going to have to make some judgment about that. But this creates sort of an anchor of market share. Now, if we wanted to then just say, well, we're in round 3. This is a round 3 report. Just verify that for me. Yes, a round 3 report. So we're going into round 4. And this was for the high-end segment. And so I can go over to, I'm going to just expand this for a second. Oh, expanded the wrong way, didn't I? Not exactly an expansion. So I'm going to go over to my market size estimator. I'm going to say, show me round 4. And let me figure out what it says the high end is going to be. It's 4656, right? And so I could just plug in here 4656. And it's going to basically say, so your forecast based on that market share in this is you're going to sell 1,249 units. So that is sort of a good starting point for you to think about your forecast. Anyway, I hope you find these tools useful. Again, I apologize. Well, maybe I don't apologize, but I did not. One of the main reasons I did not go through and just give you the ideal spot calculator outright. And same thing, I guess I did with the market size. But one of the main reasons I didn't is because with the ideal spot and the price, number one, it's important for me to know that you understand those concepts. But number two, when you get into the CompXM exam, it won't be these exact same values. And so if you don't know how to build this or adjust it or do whatever else, then you don't know how to modify this tool in the CompXM in order to make it useful for you. And so this is sort of my way of doing it. I hope that you find this useful, and good luck.